Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I have been exploring both Les Filles du Roi and Les Filles à Marier. Today's episode is Les Filles à Marier, the marriageable girls. These ladies came before and they came alone. They didn't come in big groups and they didn't receive a dowry and they were just very brave pioneers wanting to make a brand new life, marry, have children, build something for themselves. So the filles mariées are, if the filles du roi are the founding mothers, les filles à marier are the founding grandmothers. And they tend to have far more direct descendants because of how long they've been in Quebec, how early they got here. So before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. Subscribe, like, and notify. All that helps with all of those algorithms, I think they're called. And I also want to let you know, if you're new to the channel, go to Have Roots Will Travel. I have an index there. You can see previous episodes as well. I think we're on episode 146. And so obviously there's 145 that came before. And then on the other series, I think we're on 331. So we've got a lot, over 500 videos on these remarkable women. In Les Filles Mariées, there are about 262. So we're almost halfway there. So with that being said, let's get started and get to know this Fille Mariée. Today on Les Filles Mariées, episode 146, Anne de la Marque. She comes to us from a viewer request, and I was so happy that this viewer wrote in and actually gave me information about this particular fille mariée, which kind of captivated my interest. So I'm extremely grateful that they wrote in and sort of pointed me in the right direction. So let's get to know Anne a little bit better. So Anne was born in 1648 in Bordeaux, France. Her parents were Louis de la Marque and Marie Papineau. Now, Bordeaux, as many of you know the name Bordeaux with the wines and all of that, we're looking at Nouvelle-Aquitaine as the region. And inside of that, we have the Département of Gironde that you can see Bordeaux right there. And did you happen to know that one of the most powerful women in medieval Europe was born in Bordeaux? In 1122, Eleanor of Aquitaine came into the world here. She later became queen of both France and England and the mother of Richard the Lionheart. Her story shows how Bordeaux has long been tied to royalty and great events. Fast forward to the 5th through 17th centuries, and Bordeaux was a thriving port city. After the Hundred Years' War ended in 1453, it came firmly under French control and grew rich from wine trade. By the 1600s, Bordeaux was booming again, sending goods across Europe and into the Atlantic world. At the center of the city stood the Cathedral of Saint-André, a Gothic masterpiece. It was built mainly in the 14th and 15th centuries, and it wasn't just a church, it was a stage for history. In 1615, King Louis XIII married Anne of Austria inside its walls, echoing the city's long royal connections that began with Eleanor. So Bordeaux wasn't just about wine, it was a city where politics, trade, and royalty all met, and you can see Saint-André Cathedral standing as a symbol of that power. Anne would arrive in New France in 1662 at age 14 with her 19-year-old brother Jacques, who had married fille à marier Marie Bournay, who we met in episode 64. I put the links for you. So she was very, very young when she arrived. What happened next? Upon her arrival in New France, Anne would enter the convent, the Ursuline convent in Quebec City. And this was common practice. So this is 1662. Anne would actually get married in 1666. So she spent 4 years in the convent. This was a common practice for girls who were considered too young to marry, or perhaps they had an intention to become a nun. We're not really sure of that. Let's have a look at how her life progressed. The groom that she would select and who would select her, his name was Charles Testard, and he was born in 1640 in Rouen, France. His parents were Jean Testard and Anne Godefroy. Rouen, which is a city on the River Seine in northern France, is the capital of the region of Normandy. Rouen has such an amazing historical story and was at one time the largest city in medieval Europe. It played a prominent role in both English and French histories from the 11th to the 15th century. Joan of Arc herself was tried and burned alive in 1431 in this area. Rouen is a city of cultural and significance in education. It is from this area, indeed, that the Statue of Liberty sailed in June of 1885. Now, the Church of Saint Vincent in the Rouen was located at the corner of Jeanne d'Arc, current streets, and Giraud. Now, all we have left is this entryway, if you will, but that's a depiction of what it looked like. It was built between 1490 and 1556, and it was heavily damaged during World War II. And exactly, we have preserved at least part of it, so you can begin. And the area is definitely something to honor, if you will. And if you are the descendant, absolutely standing by that entranceway would be a magnificent kind of testimony to your ancestry. He would arrive in 1660. He was the brother of Jeanne Testard, who was also a femme mariée, who we have not yet profiled. You see how these families are all intertwined. And so they did get married in Montreal, actually, in February 8th, 1666. They did settle at Montreal, and let's talk a little bit about Montreal. This wonderful city that would become Montreal started off as Ville-Marie by the founder Paul de Chomedy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially just a missionary center when he founded it in May of 1642. The colony would not thrive, and it was on the verge of extinction when Chomedy himself decided to return to France to recruit 100 settlers, which would become known as Le Grand Recrue. From this small group would evolve the Notre Dame congregation, of which Sister Marguerite Bourgeois basically founded it. And when Montreal was founded, the new colonists were rapidly confronted by a very fearsome enemy, the Iroquois. And unfortunately, there was no regular army on Montreal soil until 1665 when the Carignan-Salieres regiment landed here. In the meantime, militias capable of resisting Iroquois attacks were set up. On January 27, 1663, Chomedy then again created the Sainte-Famille militia to protect Ville-Marie and its inhabitants. It was made up of about 139 voluntary colonists and divided into 20 squads. So here we have a picture of the island of Montreal. I cannot stress enough how important it is to understand that Montreal is built on an island. Therefore, it can be attacked on all fronts, which is exactly why it became a very challenging place to live, because they were kind of like a sitting duck. We have the Notre Dame Church in a depiction in the 1700s on the bottom middle, and then on the upper as it exists today. And then we have the beautiful skyline of Montreal, which every time I see it, I'm just, I was born about an hour outside of Montreal. So I absolutely, obviously resonate with Montreal, and I've seen this scene many a time. Now, the upper picture on your upper right is an artist's depiction of what the fort would have looked like in the 1640s. I've included the link for you to go to the museum where they did this particular depiction. And I've saved the best for last. On your left of your screen, upper left, we have the magnificent Old Montreal, which you have to put on your bucket list. It is an extraordinary place, and when you are walking, you feel like you're walking in history, because many of those streets have existed for as long as Montreal has been around. So you absolutely have to see Le Vieux Montréal, as we call it. Now, in the 1667 census, we have Charles Testard, 27, and Marque, his wife, is 18. And that confirms also the age she was when she arrived. They would go on to have 9 children. Marie would marry Jean Dulignon and would have 1 child who survived. She then married Antoine Duquet and would have 1 child who also survived. Then we have Gabrielle, who married Louis Jodin and would have 4 children, 2 of whom made it to adulthood. Catherine would marry Pierre Penguin and would have 1 child who would survive. Pierre's mother was Marie Marguerite Dupont, a fille mariée who we have not yet profiled. Catherine would also marry Augustin Edouard and would have 4 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Finally, we have Jean, who passed away in infancy. We have Jeanne, who would marry Nicolas Gatineau with no children, Alexis Marchand, and would have 2 children, both of whom would survive. Alexis's mother was Françoise Capel, a fille mariée, episode 32. The next one is Jean-Baptiste, who would marry Catherine Crevier and would have 1 child who made it to adulthood. Catherine's mother was Louise Lecoutre, a fille du roi, who we have profiled. Marie-Madeleine would pass away at the age of 2. Charles Joseph we do not know what happened to him. And then we have Marie, who married Joseph Lefebvre and would have 3 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. And here's an interesting thing. In the 1681 census, I have Charles, he's 45, and his children and his wife are nowhere to be seen. I have never, in these over 500 videos that I've done, ever seen something like this. I wasn't able to find a reason for it, other than possibly they're mixed up somewhere else. Not sure. In 17th century Montreal, Anne Lamarck and her husband did something very unusual. They owned jointly a cabaret that would become a popular stop for traveling merchants and traders. It wasn't just a place for food and drink. It would become notorious for violent fights, prostitution, and unfaithful husbands. On June 17, 1682, a parish priest named Jean Frémont appealed to the authorities to shut this tavern down. During the trial, neighbors accused Anne of running a scandalous and immoral business. Even wilder, witnesses claimed she owned a spell book in Greek, Latin, and French, and that she made love potions to lure men to her tavern. Her own husband testified that she was a magician. Despite the shocking accusations of witchcraft, of adultery, and debauchery, Anne was acquitted, thanks to her very powerful friends. The cabaret stayed open, but only for a few more years. There is no death record, but she has definitely passed away by 1689. She and Charles would have been married over 20 years, and she would leave us with 56 descendants. I mean, can I say, what a story? I want a movie now, don't you? Just an extraordinary woman, ahead of her time, truly strong, had lots and lots of things that could have been viewed in a negative way, but yet kept going on. So we have to absolutely salute her bravery and her confidence and her just kind of let's get the job done. So if you are a descendant of this remarkable woman, I definitely urge you to take comfort in the fact that you have this strong woman's blood flowing through your veins, because this is an amazing woman. I also want to say thank you to my patrons, supporters, and subscribers. I always say you are the wind beneath my wings. Thank you all so very, very much. And with that being said, I'll say au revoir until the next episode of Les Filles à Marier.